I'm letting in one more person, Rita, and then I think you can kick off whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. All right, everyone. Thank you again for making time for this meeting, this extra meeting on a Wednesday. Definitely, I think almost most of you now, I feel like I am in an office with you because I've been seeing you so much. So I know this takes a lot of time, and I really, really appreciate it. So we are going to jump right back into scoring. We got all the way through theme four last session and part of the way through theme five. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to skip around a bit. We're going to jump right into theme six, and then we're going to go to three and two. And if we have time at the end, we'll come back to five. We're not going to be able to get to all of our indicators in these sessions. So afterwards, we'll see what's left, and we will be reaching out to people to see if they'd be interested in just helping us score them offline asynchronously. Um, put your comments into our slide deck and tell us how you would score it, and then we can see what we can gather from there. Um, Scoring for those of you who weren't with us last time, we're going to move fairly quickly again because we're not going to be able to finish all of these. And you may not know enough about it. That's a-okay. If you have any thoughts or comments, um, you can put them into the chat. You can shout them out. But we will try and score each one and assign it one of five choices. Not applicable, being discussed or considered, being implemented and established. And you'll see in a moment that the definitions for each are on the slides. So, any questions before we jump in? All right. Oh, and I just am sending a share request.
Should be good to
Perfect.
go.
Okay. And Joanne, we'll do the same as last time. I can take notes, and then if you can just put in what we choose there, that would be great.
Sounds good.
Okay, so can everyone see my slide all right there? I know it's just the first. Is that it? Would I make it bigger? Or are we good?
Looks good.
Looks good to you. Okay, sorry, I can't see everyone too. Okay, so theme six, we're looking at food sovereignty and equity. We had 15 cab members participating. We only had one indicator we didn't answer, and we got to all of our seafood. So we did pretty well on this one. There's only nine indicators, so but still, we did well. Um, okay, so the very first indicator was looking at inequities, injustice, and barriers in the local food system, and whether or not those are being acknowledged publicly, identified at the leadership level, and then being addressed. And the resources we came up with were advocacy by Plymouth Council on Aging, South Shore Community Action Council, United Way, and then a combination of advocacy and actual land acquisition by the Native Land Conservancy. So the questions we have to answer to score this are whether or not the resources that we found are showing that this is something that is being considered, being implemented, well established in Plymouth County, or even no findings if we feel like these assets don't really speak to the indicator. And again, will anyone jump in? We'll get it started. And again, we will push for something, and we can always asterisk things. So we're tracking all the notes, the comments, and if there's a sense that, we're going to give it a being implemented, but it doesn't feel quite right, we're going to asterisk it and put in our comments. So, anyone want to start?
I'll jump in, Rita. This one sounds to me like it's being implemented. I think the organizations listed there are pretty well established. A lot of them have funding, uh, maybe even established in some ways, but I'll let others weigh in.
I agree with that from the perspective of food insecurity, and hunger and nutrition. I think there's a lot of advocacy around that side of things. But I don't think that we're really doing much when it comes to addressing some of the barriers, inequities, and injustices when it comes to actually doing farming or fishing or shellfishing.
I agree. I think that's almost like two. I mean, I know you guys can't separate it out, but it's almost like two different issues. We've talked about some of the lack of resources for inequity.
I think I'm okay with, because I think, and we just had a conversation about this, and we kind of laughed that the food system is complex. And so there's a lot of different injustices. And I think in and of itself is there anyone really looking sort of holistically at all the various food system injustices and barriers and inequities, whether that's personal access to food or food production or your ability to have a vegetable garden in your home. So there is a lot of complexity, and we did do this last time as well, where we marked two different boxes, and then we did just call it out in the notes, and we'll figure out how to address it later. But if it feels like we can't really score it properly without doing that, it's all good. I think we make those distinctions. So if you agree, Joanne, are you
Yeah,
good with
no,
that?
that sounds good.
Yeah.
So maybe for this one, we've got no findings on the production end.
Yeah.
And then where would you guys say we would fall? Would we call being implemented or established on the food security end?
I think food security is implemented.
And is that implemented, is that also because, so as a total outsider, it feels like there are some key organizations doing advocacy, but it's also, we're talking about the whole county. And is it also really sufficient? Is it connected and networked? Is that part of the hesitancy to say it's established?
I
Yeah,
would
I don't
agree
know.
with that.
I'm on the
Definitely
fence.
being implemented.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rita, I don't have the permissions to edit the slide.
Oh my gosh.
I
Sorry.
know.
All right. It's just, it's like at the end of the project, you think that you've got this all figured out. Um,
And you added me last time, so I'm surprised it didn't just stick.
I did. Okay. Um, okay, so you should be getting that now. And just, I don't know about anyone else. I did also just tell the group that we were in prior that I've actually just purchased a landline. So I'm going backwards with technology. Don't know if anyone else feels that way, but I'm done. I'm done. So I may never be good at sharing documents ever again once I get my landline here. But okay, so you should have sharing, and we've got no findings for food production and food access. We decided that it was implemented. Okay, so next
Rita,
one. Oh,
I'm
yep,
sorry. Can you
still
send it to
can't.
my Gmail? Because I think that's the one that it's trying to pick up out of here. And maybe
Oh,
I can
gotcha.
change it
Yep.
over.
Okay.
Oh, actually, I take it back. Okay, I'm good. I got it. I'm good.
Okay.
So sorry. So just remind me one more time,
Yep.
what slide were we on?
So we're on slide 159.
159. I'm so sorry, everyone. Technology is great when it works.
Yeah, no worries.
159. Okay, and
Yep.
we said no findings. And what was the other one?
No findings for food production, then being implemented for food access
Gotcha.
around, yeah, elevating inequities.
Good to go.
Um, the next slide, the next question is around actual listening sessions to plan and implement steps to correct inequities. We may also have missed some resources, so there are some, if there are other organizations that are hosting listening sessions to correct inequities, please shout them out and we'll add those. Um, but United Way was the only one that we found to have community listening sessions. Any other resources? All right. So I think then the question is around how we want to score
Can
this
I
idea.
just
Yeah. Oh yeah, Michael, go for it.
interject? You list community listening sessions as an asset under this, but there are other things happening that could be considered an asset in planning. Well, Plymouth Health and Human Services is doing a community health implementation plan right now and had a 2-day session last week that I was part of, and one of the topics was food insecurity. So I don't know where it fits in, but it wasn't a community listening session. That's the only thing I'm trying to.
Yeah, I think so the it's sort of I think that those sort of assets do come up other places in the carrot. I've got it noted here. This one is really looking at pretty specifically whether or not those programs that are being developed are utilizing public listening sessions by people who really trying to grab people who are most impacted to develop the programs. So I think the Plymouth Health and Human Services Plan is an asset, but I don't think it fits right into this one. So one that I think we might have listed for seafood is, I believe, the Division of Marine Fisheries. They do come down and have listening sessions with fishers. So that would be an example of looking to develop their programming based on input from fishers. Um, and I think we captured that in the seafood. If we didn't, we can, because I now know that they do that. But um, so I think that just kind of throwing something out there for discussion, I don't know how you would feel about, I think this is no findings. I think it's almost no findings, even though United Way is established and they're doing it. And again, not to discount that, but on the whole, it seems like this isn't a practice or program that is really happening. Anyone have any? I know
I
it's
agree with that.
sometimes it's hard to discount that established organizations are doing these things. Okay. I'm not going to score all of this, by the way, but that's my one that I'm throwing out to you. Um, okay, so this one we came up with quite a few resources. So this is looking at programs that are addressing the social determinants of health and root cause of inequities in the food system. So these are the organizations that we listed that are measuring and then also addressing root cause of health inequity. So the question is, does it feel like developing programs to address social determinants of health in Plymouth County being implemented? Is it well established? Um, we do again look very specifically at the food system, but I think that's increasingly part of the conversation.
I'd suggest here that it's pretty well established. Um, because all of our nonprofit hospitals are measuring, and there's a lot of programs across the region, I think, that are trying um, to support the disadvantaged community members in multiple different ways.
Hmm. I think what I've heard as well is that programs like Food is Medicine are growing and connecting, I think, community health centers to nutritionists. Not sure if so. I think that kind of thing is happening, but how does everyone feel about established? Does that feel like we're doing justice to what's going on?
Yes.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so this question we had no findings. This was looking at empowering collaboration with historically underserved populations. So this is really looking at, are we empowering people who are typically uh, coming from disadvantaged backgrounds to collaborate and then co-create or create solutions to overcome some of these barriers? Not are we developing programs for people that are affected, but are we supporting them and empowering them to develop their own solutions? We came up with no findings, and unless we have some other resources to add, this one would be pretty straightforward with scoring. Any other thoughts or comments on this one?
No.
Okay. This is another one that we had no findings. So this is really looking at connecting particularly youth to jobs in the food system and whether or not there was any explicit policy goal to reduce unemployment, to connect people, connect BIPOC community members 2 local food system jobs. We had no
Could that be the
findings.
unemployment office reader at all?
That's actually a good question. We didn't reach out to them. They didn't come up at all. Just gonna, and is there, I know in New Bedford, Mass Hire, I don't know if, are they a statewide organization?
Yeah, there's like the Greater Brockton Career Center, and there's another one on the other side of the region, I think, that serves other communities. Um, but it's all kind of connected under Mass Hire.
Okay.
So you have to walk in there in order to get the support. So they don't proactively, apart from like a couple of specific occupations, they do have programs sometimes that they'll run where they'll try and recruit people for job opportunities and training,
Hmm.
and they'll do a job fair. Typically, you have to walk in there to get support, and I'm not sure how connected they are to producer jobs. Certainly
Hmm.
like the restaurants and the retailers and stuff, they probably will have.
Yeah. So I'm going to put down that those are some good follow-up questions. And, I think we can follow up. I would suggest, based on what we found, if Mass Hire is kind of the root organization based on what we found in Bristol, at least, and if nothing's jumping to people's minds, there isn't a strong connection between Mass Hire and food.
Mm.
Um, so I would suggest we keep it no findings, and if we find more, we can always come back to it. All right. This now gets specific. So all of our blue slides again are fishing. So this is elevating inequities in fishing. The Community Advisory Board, we didn't find anything. This comment here is based on follow-up conversation that Lydia from the Barrett Planning Group had with Melissa Ferretti from the Herring Pond tribe. And she felt that they're not being public, the inequities in fishing are not being publicly addressed. And I think one note to carry forward, the Community Advisory Board mentioned that there's a lack of fish is a big barrier. And then for some of the indigenous groups, some of the biggest issues that they're having are access to the water because of the cost of gear. And while they have the right to fish, they don't necessarily have the ability to get to the water. And I know for some of the tribes, fish is a really important part of their diet. So those are some of the inequities that we're hearing aren't being elevated. So anyone have any comments, thoughts before we keep it at no findings? Um, I also can't see everyone, so you're gonna have to shout out if you feel strongly or I'm missing your comment or head nodding, you're gonna have to shout it out. Okay, listening sessions for seafood workers. We did have a little more here. These are both state level organizations, Massachusetts Food Policy Collaborative and Division of Marine Fisheries. Um, I don't know, is Cassandra still here? Apologies again if I
I'm
can't
here.
see. Yeah, I feel like you're sort of our coastal representative, and I don't know if you have any thoughts, if you ever hear of anything um, around listening sessions for seafood workers. I'm not sure how strong seafood industry is in Cohasset, but um,
Um, so we do have a harbor committee that has 2 seats available for local lobstermen.
mhm.
However, in the 4 years that I've been with the town, those seats have remained vacant, because I'm not sure that the lobstermen are willing to take their time to go to a night meeting. Um, so the opportunity is there for them to voice their opinion, but they haven't taken it.
Okay. Um, so is what would be the sentiment around? So these are 2 state level resources are the primary resources.
Mhm.
I think to your point, Cassandra, we have heard that there are sometimes shellfish advisory committees. Sometimes, well, once we heard of there's a fish committee in on the vineyard. Whether or not those seats are filled, whether or not they're listened to, how active they are, that's all part of the mix. So, um, we haven't listed any of those. We didn't get any of those sort of town-specific resources. So where would people want to land this one with scoring?
Maybe being considered.
That, yeah, I see some head nodding being considered. Oh yeah, Joanne's got it. Yeah, I think that, and I think it's a funny one. I'll just call out that because some of these boards have existed for a while, it feels like it's more than being considered, but because they're not very active, I think I would agree that that's a really apt way to score it. So thumbs up, good to go. All right. Okay, now we're getting into social determinants and workforce equity. This was again more specific to the seafood. And I know that these organizations are more general resources that are looking at housing, healthcare, immigration barriers. But they were listed and, I think probably important to the broader food system as well. BAMSI and Father Bills. Um, any other comments or resources, or anyone want to shout out an initial scoring suggestion?
My
Oh,
opinion is,
Michael, wait, I see Michael talking, but I think you're on mute if you're talking to us.
All right, I thought I had unmuted. Would Mass Fishing Partnership be a resource here? So I know they
Yeah.
work on healthcare and other supports for folks in the fishing industry.
Um, Healthcare and other supports. Is that different than the fishermen support services? Do you know?
I'm not sure what that is, so it
Okay.
would be something different.
Okay. Healthcare and other support services. Okay, so we have another resource that is more specific to seafood workforce. Joanne, I think you were going to shout out a suggested scoring.
yeah, I was just gonna say, I think this one's a tough one because um on housing, there's a lot of general work in general being done, but I'm not aware of anything specific to a specific workforce group other than just the general workforce. So that could be argued to be established. Permits, like I think each one of these is a little bit different. Immigration barriers, I'm not sure if anybody's working on that in Massachusetts other than the general immigration stuff that's going on. So I think it's kind of a mixed bag here.
I'm also just not sure that these two organizations, I mean, they do help in a lot of ways as far as especially like housing. But I'm not sure. I mean, if this is really like tied to like the seafood workforce, I'm not sure that like it's really on the radar of BAMSI or Father Bills to be like focusing on like that specific community group. Does that make sense? So even though I think that they're both like very established organizations, I don't know that they're established as far as like being like a support where like seafood workers are like, oh yeah, like we all go to BAMSI, we all, you know what I mean? Like, does that make sense?
Definitely.
Yeah,
And I was going to say
agreed.
it also felt like it came up a bit in our conversation, was it yesterday, around some of the findings from the local food action plan, where we were looking at housing generally versus housing for
Farmers.
farmers
Yeah.
and workforce. So, yeah, Joanne, sorry if I cut across you there.
No, I was just saying I agree. It sounds kind of like a no findings thing, really.
Yeah, I would. Yep, I support that. Noting that Mass Fishing Partnership, we can look into that as well. There might be at least one resource, so we won't discount that. We'll have a look. Okay, and then we've got the youth and BIPOC employment and fishing. So program, project, policy that's really looking to connect youth, BIPOC community members to seafood jobs. And Duxbury Maritime School seemed to be a really strong resource there, but the only one that we found.
And I would say that they do a lot with youth, but I'm not sure how specific it is to the BIPOC component.
Mm-hmm. Um, and that's a good. How would people rate this?
I'd say no findings.
Others good with that? Anyone want to argue? No? All right. All right, Joanne, we're actually going to skip to slide 84, which is 3. That's theme 6 all done. Thanks very much. Sorry, I'm just going to finish that note. All right. So we're going to skip to slide 84 and we're going to take on theme 3. We didn't make it all the way through theme 3, so this will be one, even with resources, we'll be catching up on. So we're going to score the ones that we had. 13 CAB members participated, and you can see we had 8 carrot indicators unanswered and 8 seafood and fishing. Seafood and fishing because we didn't actually have them added in at this point when we did this one. Okay, so this first one is pretty big. And is looking at not as much at, although we included some of them, not as much at things like the tools that are being used for farmland protection, but more of that broader farmland protection strategies, development rights programs, land trusts, and we pulled out quite a few. So we do have some of the state level resources like the agricultural preservation restrictions, conservation restrictions. Then we've got our trusts. And then there are some great programs, really, some of the ones that stood out, Murray Farm, the Old State Farm, Plymouth County. So quite a few projects that were utilizing different tools to protect farmland that involved collaboration.
I think the Marion Institute Frogfoot Farm partnership with who's on here from that Cranberry? What Cranberry group is that? That's
80 Makepeace.
yes. So
thank you, Meg. That's a great, seeing as I am from Marion Institute and I helped to get that going. That was a myth, but I just forget it's Plymouth County.
Shame on you. Shame on you.
Oh, Liz is here. Oh no.
I am here. I'm watching you.
Oh no, I forgot to add us.
I feel like I fulfilled my my part as an advisor on the committee there.
Yeah, love you, Meg.
Good call. Thank you. So we've got an additional asset, the Frogfoot Farm, that again is a collaborative project, and really bringing agricultural land back or land into agriculture. Anyone have any thoughts on this one and how we're going to score it? The scoring actually goes on to a second page, just because there were significant resources. And this is one I think that, again, there can be a little bit of debate around. There's a lot of resources. Do they read as established strategies? Is it more implementation stage as opposed to established? Anyone have any thoughts on how to think about how to assign a score here?
I mean, I would say established because I do think that some of these towns are basically copying, some of the successful models are basically just being like replicated in other towns, or the resources, like a CPA is being utilized for this in other areas. So I feel like the word is out on how to address some of these options. So I don't think that I think that it's like established and it's known about in this sector.
I'd agree with that. I think the tools are there. It's just an issue of some of them not really being used as much as they could be.
Yeah, I agree as well. It's more of like a marketing issue, as if people, are fully educated about options versus what's already there.
Great. Okay. Established. All right, this is hunting, fishing, foraging programs. We had quite a few resources. I think there's sort of a broad variety in where they're coming from. We called out the fishing derby, the Woods Hole YMCA with their camp. Although I suppose that is technically not Plymouth, but it was someone on a Plymouth, on the Plymouth call that brought it up, so it is impacting Plymouth. Um, we have federal law, Duxbury Maritime again, municipal permits, peer-to-peer learning. Um, so I think the question again is sort of diverse sources of resources. There's definitely some resources there. We didn't find any clear resources from rod and gun clubs based on um, where it's just some internet research, but that was brought up in conversation, and they may be more of a resource than we've recognized, but that's only the only other one that we've sort of left out because we just didn't have enough information on what they're providing. Anyone who wants to hunt, fish, or forage, thoughts on how resources are available to you?
I thought that there was a like women that hunt educational program that was put on by the state division of fish and wildlife. I have to look it up, but I thought that there was an educational program offered. I know Vermont has a really good model of it. They do some pretty extensive programming, but I can look it up to see if I'm just making things up.
Yeah. And I think that yeah, that would definitely be a resource to add. And again, looking at is it a once off? And that kind of helps us score as well as looking at what is once off, what has long-term funding. Um,
They do,
what? Oh yeah.
sorry.
Oh no,
Sorry,
go
Rita, I
ahead.
thought you were done. Go ahead, finish your thought.
Oh, just looking at, does it have long-term funding? Has it been around for a while? Is it accessible to people? In Bristol, it was actually Susan Murray made, I think, a really interesting comment. She said, if you know how to hunt, fish, and forage, you know where to find the resources. And if you don't know how to do it, those resources are much less available and accessible. So,
So yeah, the Mass Division of Fish and Wildlife offers a program called BOW, B-O-W, Becoming an Outdoors Woman. And they offer shooting skills workshops, hunting, and other classes and activities designed for adult women throughout the year. They have 2 events coming up they got one event in June, they got one event in July listed on their website. So it does look like it's an
great.
active program.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can
And
add that in.
DMF, yeah, and DMF in general has basic hunter education. And I think they're typically free. I'll pop the link in here. I think it's again just more of a marketing thing.
And are those programs that are active in Plymouth County?
Statewide.
Yeah, statewide.
Statewide. So they're happening in multiple locations across the state.
Yes. It looks like, yeah, it looks like their in-person one is in Leominster, and they have a blended format too, Sturbridge, Harvard. So I'm not sure how far down they come, like if they ever come to Plymouth, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But
So
they're
they are
offered across
definitely a
state.
state resource. Yeah,
Yeah.
state level resource.
I know we've worked with them too on Anglers programs to teach kids how to fish.
Yep.
Taunton River Watershed Alliance, we've invited them in. They've run clinics.
Yeah, and several municipalities run clinics through DMF as well too.
Yep.
Right. There's one here scheduled for May 19th at the Duxbury Senior Center. It's actually at the Powder Point Bridge in Duxbury. There are others. Wareham, Take Me Saltwater Fishing at Bessie Park, and so on. So yeah, these are sponsored by I think Marine Fisheries, Division of Marine Fisheries, Recreational Saltwater Fishing,
There are also recreational freshwater fishing classes and so on the web page, and I'll try and pop it into the chat.
Great, thank you. So throwing it out there that this is starting to feel a little bit more established in Plymouth County than kind of maybe the first read, that if there's towns that are hosting events regularly, and it feels like there's resources available, that it's seems like it's somewhere between being implemented, being established, or being implemented and established. Joanne, were you thinking? It's kind of a nod-ish.
Yeah, I don't know which way we'll go. I think it's established because I think it's more than anything else a marketing issue. If you want to do it, you'll find resources to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree that it's more knowing that it's there and going out and getting it, using it, take advantage of it.
All right. Thumbs up from others. All right. Silence will be a yes here. Okay. Encouraging new food enterprise. So this one was looking at programs that are really minimizing barriers to starting new fishing and food production enterprises. The primary and only resource we came up with um, was Blue Spoon Community Kitchen. Um, I don't know if it was a miss to not include some of the cooperative extension programs in here. I think that there is a whole indicator on cooperative extension, so maybe we really kind of captured it there. Um, a lot of conversations, I can't remember specifically the Plymouth conversations, but I know many of the conversations that we've had around this indicator, people tend to focus on the sort of the opposite, that there's actually quite a few barriers to new food businesses and not always the support there, but I don't know that that's true in Plymouth.
I think it's a tough one because I think with starting a business in general, there is often, depending on the municipality, permitting and other regulatory things and hoops that have to be jumped through. So it can be challenging. So I wouldn't say that it's minimal barriers. I would definitely say there are still probably moderate amounts of barriers to just starting a business in general. So that would still apply to your fishing and food production enterprises. I think fishing, you'd probably even land with extra hoops to jump through. And then if you're a small scale person, like you're not looking to buy a building to do something or lease a building to do something, I think it depends on the cottage laws that are in each municipality. So because it's definitely not minimal barriers, I probably lean sort of maybe more towards like almost being considered or maybe even no findings really. I don't know.
Yeah, anyone else? So if we went out into the public and said we found no findings, really and truly, other than maybe one organization that's supporting new food businesses by minimizing barriers, how true does that feel for new food businesses?
Well, I mean, I think especially when it comes to like the fishing industry, like I wouldn't feel like there's, any findings on that.
And this might be mirrored, but I think we'll grab it here regardless. So, yes,
I think maybe the only exception would be restaurants. That might be the only one part of the kind of the food system that maybe would be more supported than any others through the general business support services that we've talked about before. So, but I agree. I think no findings is good on this one.
Yeah. Then I think that regulatory point is a good one too, and just what was discussed in other counties is even more so if you're not sometimes even from New England or Massachusetts or whether that's because you're from Wisconsin or Brazil, that the regulatory part can be really confusing. Okay. All right, so this was looking at whether there are regulations that allow food for local consumption to be grown within the community. And you can see we really honed in on some of the supports through community gardens, raised beds, 4-H. We had the freight farm called out. That this is something that is quite supported within Plymouth County. I think one of the ones that stood out that isn't listed here is, I believe, in Brockton, public land can't be used for community garden space. So that might be one that's prohibitive. And then we did in the CAB discussion, there were quite a few restrictions that were called out, including noise, odor, roosters, health and safety, water availability. I'm going to get to that point where I'm going to call on people to give me random scoring, and then we can discuss it.
I was gonna say either established or being implemented.
Okay. Yeah, how do others feel about that? Thanks, Cassandra. You took one for the team there.
My pleasure.
I think
I
I'd
also
lean
think
towards.
there's, oh, sorry. I
No,
also
go
think
ahead,
there's
Teresa.
multiple schools, not just Plymouth and Carver, that are
Mhm.
all doing the hydroponics right now. It's
Okay.
really taking off. And
That's
just
great.
for clarification, for Carver Public Schools, we didn't have a freight farm. We had
Okay.
from a company, Fork Farms, so they were a smaller individual tower hydroponics.
Okay, gotcha. Fork Farms, did you say? Yeah. And is it the Fork Farms? Is that sort of hydroponic tower? Is that
Yes,
what in other schools? Okay.
yes.
I think the keywords in this one are food for local consumption. I think the challenge with a lot of the school programs is that they're actually not consuming that food.
Mm.
It's more educational than it is for consumptive use. I know certainly in some of the schools in Brockton, it's the teacher that takes it home and eats it because she can't give it to the kids and they're not going to use it in the kitchens. So I think it's probably going to depend. And also across the board on all of these, I think some of these programs kind of come and go. So like I know in some communities they had a community garden, and for a couple of years they didn't have a community garden, but it came back again because there was interest again. So for that reason, I'm kind of leaning towards being implemented.
Okay. I think that's a really good point that particularly around the raised beds and community gardens, it's interesting that there's a notable fluctuation there. All right. Are people good with kind of have a being implemented, established, leaning towards being implemented?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We've got so this gets at some of those cottage laws and whether or not we've got regulations that are supportive for local food being processed by small scale processors, and supportive of that. And there was quite a bit of discussion around general sentiment that processing in Plymouth County, possibly really in Massachusetts, is fairly restrictive, varies town by town, and varies town by town in how health departments are interpreting state regulations. And yeah, you can see the sort of the three resources that we pulled out. Having Mulaney's does stand out because there are a lot of communities that don't have seafood processors that will process at a smaller scale. So not to discount the value of just having that resource. So looking at our regulations to support small scale processors being considered, implemented.
I mean, did we share like the other shared kitchens before? I mean, would those go in here too? Like,
Oh, we did. You're right. We had
Peggy's
the Bon.
Peggy's Kitchen and is in Kingston, and then
I think that And
is
it
in
is
their own spot.
great to rename those just because those are, when we're looking at again, that kind of like, what do we have? These are the resources that we have that are being utilized that people know about. And that really is where Mulaney's falls in, and even Boys and Girls Club. And then I think this particular question is really around the regulations. So I'm not sure that these findings, to be honest, even really answer this indicator. They are
Mhm.
valuable and support it, but this one is really looking at, do we have regulations that allow and support local food to be processed by small scale processors?
Some communities do allow the small scale cottage side of things to take place.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like an individual board of health policy, because I know some board of healths in different towns are a little bit
mhm.
more stringent than others. So I think there's definitely a town to town vibe.
Um, yeah, and I think that yeah, and then there's the state part of it. So it sounds like it's falling somewhere between either being considered or being implemented. Um,
I'd probably lean towards being implemented only because I think the trend is to allow for more of this, generally
mhm,
speaking. We're seeing more communities become less restrictive
mhm.
as opposed to more restrictive with this stuff.
Okay. Yeah, that's great insight. Yep. Everyone good with that? All right. Last one that we have in theme 3 here. So this is around affordable access to mulch, seeds, compost, fresh water. So again, this is looking at community self-reliance, community members' ability to grow their own food and have access to the resources and materials you need to be able to grow food. So we had Black Earth and their discounted bags of compost for customers, and we came up with 2 seed libraries, but we didn't have a whole lot of other resources.
There's a
Um,
new seed library in Brockton that's just
okay.
opened.
I mean, also, I think there's a few towns out there that the DPW has the ability for you to take compost from. They have like municipal like compost piles that you can like freely take from. Like I live in Whitman, for example, and that's, I mean, like I wouldn't take it from there, but it is, you do have access to it.
I think that's the comment that came up a couple times is um that there are municipalities that have it, but there is a quality concern, and I know that I don't know enough about how regulated that compost is, if there is basic quality testing that has to be done. No, there's not. Yeah.
No.
So that's something that we've really heard across the board, that it's there. And I think that's one of the reasons we didn't start listing out the
Include it.
municipalities that
Yeah.
have it. Um, um,
Seeds.
oh yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think there are a lot of grassroots like seed swapping groups. They tend to be seed and plants in general. I think they tend to be more like decorative gardening or native plants, as
Mm,
opposed to actual food plants, but you do sometimes in those groups come across some of those actual food crops.
mhm. So I think looking at this question, because that's true, and I will note someone had brought up, I don't know if Master Gardeners, they do provide soil testing sometimes, and some
Mhm.
no.
Yeah, not
Yep.
really. I mean, the master gardeners, you know, the soil testing that they're able to do is not really like on a deep level. I mean, it's really nothing more extensive than like you could get yourself like a kit like locally. But I mean, really, like you know, the only organizations that are doing like more comprehensive testing is like the UMass Soil Lab. NOFA Massachusetts does soil testing as well. Most of the master gardeners, what they'll do is they'll basically do like a pH test. That's pretty much like all you're going to get. But like as far as like lead testing goes and things like that, like you're going to have to pay for laboratory testing.
Yeah. And I think that's the problem with the UMass and the Master Gardeners as well, is that I don't know if I'd call it affordable. Like if you want to go through the Master Gardeners program, I think it's pretty pricey.
but they send theirs out too. Like they don't like because I'm a master gardener with the Barnstable County, and so it's like they have basically like a microscope and then the ability to do like very, very basic,
Hmm.
like it's not really like it's not even like what I would,
Yeah.
say is really like testing, but
Yeah.
Yeah. They mostly train. They do a lot of good training.
they do great training. Yeah, that's awesome
Yeah.
training, but yeah.
One,
Oh yeah.
one of the thoughts, I don't know whether it meets the first word requirement of affordable, but it is accessible, is, for example, Plymouth Patuxent Museum has got heirloom plants and seeds and so on available. They may be a resource that should be considered in this.
Yeah, I think that's a good a great addition. And it also gets at, some of the indicators that we had felt were missing too, where some of that is their work being done around some of that seed saving for climate resiliency, um, and supporting farmers in changing climate. So I think that's a great resource to list either way. Um, so I think it comes back to, so we've got some additional resources, new seed library, access to some compost, whether or not the quality is great. And then some of these informal networks that are doing some plant swapping. So, and then we've got soil testing. Does affordable access to the key components to grow your own food feel like it is something that is being considered, being implemented? Doesn't feel like it's established in Plymouth County.
I would say like in the being considered realm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
especially because of the affordable word. I mean, I know when I had it was only 40 square feet, and it was so expensive to keep that going, and it was just a vegetable
Yeah.
garden.
And it's even more expensive when you're not very good at growing vegetables like me.
I had some of that challenge too, particularly
Yeah.
cucumbers.
You don't do the math on some of your vegetables. All right, so we've got one vote for being considered. How do others feel about that? It's being considered, but not really being implemented in any kind of networked, intentional way.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was going to say being considered sounds right because it's sort of a catch can system that we're looking at.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah. Okay. All right, that's theme 3 for us. So we're gonna jump to theme 2, which is slide 51. For the last bit of I think we got through all of the indicators here, except for the seafood ones. So this is community health and well-being. And it would have been a little while ago now that we looked at these. So this indicator is looking at opportunities for socially disadvantaged community members. So are there opportunities for them in leadership, collaboration, making connections in a way to foster equity and inclusion? And we came up with some, you know, good local resources. I think we know that Digger Foods no longer exists, but does the Brockton Farmers Market still exist?
It does.
Okay, so that was what they got called out. Um, Western Mass Food Processing. Meg, I don't know if you'd agree that they're an informal connection for farmers. Not sure that that applies to here, to Plymouth.
Yeah, I would say that they're really not. I would say that in this part of the state, like the craft network would be
Stronger.
much stronger. Yeah.
Yeah. So EMAS Craft
Yeah.
is um any other thoughts on this one? So I think the question again, going back, these are the resources we found. Are there significant leadership opportunities for socially disadvantaged groups? Fostering equity and inclusion, leadership, collaboration, Is that something that's being done, being discussed? Doesn't seem like it's well established, but
Yeah, and just one thing too, like because it says the mega grant program for MDAR. I mean, I would say that basically all grants that MDAR is putting out, they do have a part that asks for consideration about equity. Have you been? Are you part of a disadvantaged group? So that's pretty much all of their grants now.
okay, great. Any thoughts on this one? Anyone want to throw out comment suggested scoring for leadership opportunities in Plymouth County for socially disadvantaged community members? That could be rural, that could be BIPOC, that could be environmental justice, renters.
I'm honestly not sure how many of these could really be considered leadership opportunities.
Mm.
I think there's definitely maybe some connections being made here. I'm kind of honestly leaning towards no findings.
It's a good point. Anyone else have, yeah. Anyone else want to comment on potential no findings for leadership opportunities in Plymouth County?
I would agree with Joanne.
Yeah. All right. Okay. No findings on that one. Okay. Oh wow, hold on 1 second here. It looks like, did it get spread over? Sorry about this. I didn't look over the, okay, I think we might have some more. So we might want to consider. Let me just do one quick thing here because I think I didn't realize that resources. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have everyone look at that again in light of the fact that we had more resources listed off. And we may have the same conclusion that these aren't really specific to leadership opportunities. But I think that, again, the Community Advisory Board discussion was pretty expansive in thinking about what some of the opportunities might be. Okay, so adding on to the ones that we just looked at, apologies there. Adding on to the ones that we just looked at, we have mentoring programs from My Brother's Keeper, Old Colony YMCA. Partnerships with other organizations, Land for Good. I don't know how active Land for Good is in Plymouth. Joanne, I don't know if they're an organization you've come across.
I have not myself, no.
Yeah, I've worked with them a bunch, and they were super active. Dee from Ivory Silo was working there part-time. And unfortunately, like she had to take a step back and just focus more on her farming. So for like a hot minute there while we had Dee, like her and I are working like a ton together. And then now like losing her, the position is like open again for like a Southeastern Mass, like I think like Northern Rhode Island person, but there's nobody in place. So for right now, I would say that like if I tell people to go there, they're going to have to kind of go up to like the bigger organization. So they're probably not going to get the face time that they're looking for. But hopefully once somebody's back in that position, like who's local, like we'll have, because for a while there, we had a pretty good thing going on.
Mm-hmm. And that was, how long ago now was that she was there? 3 years
Like
or so?
I'd say like, yeah, 2 years. And she like,
Okay.
I think she just is tapering off probably since like February.
Yeah, okay. And because Land for Good, they do have some pretty specific programs for BIPOC farmers. Again, how active that is in Plymouth County now, or how recent that is. So we do have a few more. Again, USDA, obviously, new entry, are outside of Plymouth County, but they are available to Plymouth County farmers and residents. Herring Pond does quite a bit of work for their own community members. And then we did have Plymouth County 4-H, All Things Possible. So we do have a few more. So we might, I don't know if it feels like, so we're still looking at leadership opportunities for socially disadvantaged in Plymouth. And I think that, again, looking at the first page, none of those really seemed like leadership opportunities. Do any of these feel different than what we scored the first slide, which we had no findings?
So I would just say that the question is there are opportunities for leadership, collaboration, and connection. So I definitely think some of these do give opportunities for collaboration and connection, which could lead to leadership, maybe. I'm thinking of CMAP in particular, in terms of, I mean, they do a lot of advocacy and they bring farmers and they try to bring the food system together as well. The other thing I would think of when we were first talking about this, a lot of towns have ag commissions or ag boards that are sort of advisory boards to the whether it's the Board of Health or the Select Board, and that's an opportunity for leadership if someone is interested in the issue. And I know the Farm Bureau is encouraging farmers to join their local ag board or start a local ag board if there isn't one already. So I don't know if that should be included, but just looking at the whole totality of the question, I think it's more than no findings, because I think there is some stuff going on, whether it's reached the level of leadership or not. There is activity.
I think that's a really good
I mean,
point.
I would totally agree with you, and I do think it's a good point. But having worked, I am a member of Farm Bureau, and I'm at their meetings, and I'm on the board of CMAP, and I'm on the planning committee for SNEACs. And I will say that the planning committee for SNEACs actually has done a lot of work to specifically include and elevate a lot of different voices. Like we talked about, the Urban Farming Institute is part of that. The land trust we talked about is part of that. So but I'm gonna tell you right now, even CMAP's board, even Farm Bureau meetings, there might be a desire and an opportunity for people who are BIPOC to have leadership roles, but there are no people in those spaces that I would identify as BIPOC beyond, like I say, the SNEACs conference planning group.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Meg. I think the opportunities, I mean, they're there, and to be included and to be heard, but it's almost, walk before you learn how to run. So it's like, I'd say, almost being considered, because you're waiting for people to come up and step forward and take advantage of the opportunity. And a lot of that's awareness too. A lot of people still don't think they can participate. But I mean, there's a lot of doors open. There's a lot of programs. So
I think too, with the socially disadvantaged groups too, though, a lot of the barriers with all of these opportunities is that, they're unpaid positions. They're usually at inconvenient times. There's typically no transportation available. Childcare isn't offered. It's all the standard stuff that you often hear about.
Yes, I would agree.
So I think, yeah,
it's almost like you need the MVP 2.0 incentive for all of these types of programs.
right.
Let's get them there. Let's pay stipends. Let's, let them be heard. Let them speak. Let them see their words in policy. But it's not going to happen for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean,
actually, sorry, I was just going to add that the Herring Pond tribe in an interview was pretty upfront about that. They said, everybody wants us to participate and stuff, but they don't offer any financial incentive, and time is money if you're not going to work or not using that for something else. So.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say too, I mean, even with just the SNEACs conference and that planning committee, we are trying to work hard to get different people in the room. But then this year as well, there was such a huge focus on immigration status and ICE. And so, some of those people were very focused on keeping members of their specific farming community safe working, etc. So there might also just be that like the people who are that we want to kind of get to the table, those voices, they're like they just have so much bigger priorities on their plate. And then of course there's also people who do a lot of the work on the ground who are maybe like not documented, and so they have taken like a huge step back.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. Bill, did you want to add something more?
I was just thinking, when Meg was saying that, at the Ag Conference this year, there were folks asking people, survey questions about, would you come to a webinar? And they were given times, afternoon, kind of like lunch and learn, typical things that we'd go to. And I knew one of the guys, he was a farmer. I said, you're not going to go to any one of these. I said, but if I put one on from 6 to 7 in the middle of the week, would you go? And he goes, absolutely. He goes, you got to work around my schedule. He goes, I'd love to do it, but I can't because I'm working. And so it even comes down to when you can get people to come to these things if you offer them. And it's kind of like meeting people, where they live and then planning, like I said, like you live there too, and it's part of your life.
So it sounds like there are quite a few resources that allow or support collaboration and connection. I don't know if I actually don't know how strongly I would word that. There are opportunities for collaboration and connection. Leadership opportunities are a bit inaccessible, and also maybe not as available. And also, yeah, I think it's that question of, are there truly leadership opportunities there for socially disadvantaged? And why are they so inaccessible? Or we sort of listed off why. I guess it's how do you change that? So coming back to the scoring, and we can call out some of these nuances, looking at even just the collaboration and connection part and thinking about, being considered, being implemented, established. Do we need to separate those out from leadership? Do opportunities for leadership feel different from opportunities for collaboration and connection? I'll pull up definitions here. So we're looking at these opportunities. These opportunities potentially separating out collaboration and connection from leadership and thinking about, are they being considered, being implemented, or established?
I would say like being considered, because again, it's not that these organizations, these groups don't want, everyone to participate, everyone have a seat at the table. It's just that like it's not happening.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Even going back to those seats on the Lobsterman boards that Cassandra was mentioning, it's been considered, but if they're not really being utilized, then it's not really being implemented. Like that hurdle hasn't been jumped regularly enough. Anyone else want to chime in on a vote for being considered versus anything else up here? We've got thumbs up
Yeah,
there.
that works.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. Great. Oh God. That's same ones repeated there. Okay. So this is monitoring public health indicators and relationships to food. So this is just looking at who's doing the monitoring and whether or not those programs exist. And we have some Tufts Health and their community health needs assessments, their community profiles, Plymouth County, and I think, is that the one that you were talking about there, Michael? No. Okay.
Well, it's
That would have been
the
the town
town of
one.
Plymouth,
Okay.
Health and Human Services. So that's
That's
different
right.
than Plymouth County. If Plymouth County is doing a health assessment, I'm not aware of it, but
No,
They're not. Is that
not
correct?
Plymouth County, just the
Okay,
town.
so I think
Yeah.
that's the miss.
Yeah. And here
Assign-
you can add all the health assessments being done by the hospitals that you had on that previous slide as well.
Okay. So add all assessments being done by hospital. Yeah, we had talked a bit about that, I think, in one of the other themes we were looking at. So we do have quite a few. I'd say there's about 7 different hospital resources like Beth Israel, Deaconess. Can't think of them off the top of my head. I could find the slide, but it might take me a moment. We do have some other significant assessments being done by hospitals. And again, we talked about in that last one, looking at that relationship to food. So uh and we had a scoring note work being done. That's an old scoring note. Anyone want to have a shot at how you would want to score this? Public health indicators and their relationship to food.
So I think
Yeah.
all these assessments are happening and they
Mhm.
are producing data that are health indicators. I guess the part that needs to be expressly written into what they're doing is connecting it to food system related community health, which I think more and more of these assessments are considering food insecurity as a social determinant, obviously, and something that they need to focus on. So I would say it's between being implemented and established because there's a
Mhm.
lot going on and there's a lot of awareness of food insecurity. So
Yeah.
that's where my vote.
And I would agree that it's somewhere probably in between. I think the other thing that's missing right now is we don't see any municipal plans or programs. Like, unless you're the hospital, there's very few people that are also relying on that data to make informed decisions. So some of our communities are using these Tufts Health community profiles for their age-friendly planning. But generally speaking, that integration I don't think is really there yet.
Okay. So sorry, so the information is really sort of utilized in-house and not necessarily being utilized by other organizations.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. To me, it has felt like this connection to food insecurity and increasingly kind of a step past food insecurity into nutrition security, where it's not just about do you have enough food, it's do you have access to nutritious food. It feels fairly new, um, and something that's kind of come to the forefront in the last, I mean, it does feel like it's the last 3 years. Maybe it's probably been sooner because I'm not necessarily in it. But I guess I'm kind of supporting probably a being implemented as opposed to established
Yeah.
vote.
I think that's a good point because I'm not even sure how deep. I'd have to look back at this, and maybe you know, Michael, but I think the even the surveys that the hospitals do focus more on food access rather than they do on nutrition. Um,
Yeah, it's a good point.
yeah,
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but they're both issues, obviously.
yeah,
Mhm.
I will
Okay.
say so. As I mentioned before, the Plymouth HHS chip implementation plan. I was part of the food insecurity group, and we talked a lot about access, talked a lot about nutrition, we talked a lot about education about how to prep food. So we took a pretty deep dive, I would say. So,
Okay.
but I agree.
Interesting.
I think there's a lot of movement towards the connection between health indicators and food, but not quite
Mhm.
there.
Okay. Great. All right.
Rita, which
Yeah.
okay, I just want to make sure if slide 57 is okay to mark that on.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I'm just skipping ahead because we did shift things around to try and get all the resources on one slide, but I missed that leadership one. Now I'm worried I've missed other ones, but I think we're good. Okay, this is farm to institution procurement. So getting locally grown food into institutions, including schools, and CARET does call out daycare facilities, hospitals, correctional facilities. most of our resources focused on schools. We didn't really find much evidence for any of the others. So we've got um, we've again we kind of have a smattering of resources here, and Meg, you might have some more thoughts too, because I think the farm to institution seems to kind of like ebb and flow, um, and really vary, and some of that has to do with source of funding.
Yep.
So,
I would totally agree with that. I was going to say that, like, obviously, I think Mass Farm to School is like the biggest like leader in this in the state.
mhm.
And I know that they just are about to experience a massive funding cut, if I'm not mistaken. So, I think that it's one of those things where different school districts have, taken the leap and they have done some of this, but then, when the funding runs out, they oftentimes, don't renew. Which is one of the complaints that I hear from farmers, is that it's really hard to be consistent in this area because when the schools don't have funding, they're going to like lose that pathway. So it's hard for them to plan for it. And then obviously too, like we spoke about earlier, there's a lot of places that because they have longstanding contracts, they won't allow other like local food to come in the door or from the gardens. I know like Holly Hill, I would include Holly Hill a little bit in this because they've tried to do some advocacy work at a lot of the schools that they have school gardens in, to try to like work around some of those regulations. And then, but like even for example, I mean, part of the reason why the Plymouth County Sheriff's Department donates so much of the food that they grow is that they are not able to, utilize it in the jail. So, again, you have a player who's growing a lot of food, but yet the incarcerated individuals are not able to have access to it. So I think that the schools kind of experience some of that as well. And then I think that like as far as schools consistently buying local, it's again 100% funding related.
And the Plymouth County farm there, is that procurement rules, procurement policy that's means they can't use it in the, or is
Yeah.
it volume? Okay.
I just want to add something to that.
Mhm.
The state now does have open procurement for the farm to school. They've already procured produce, vegetables, farm fresh vegetables. That makes it so much easier for the schools just to go. I think it's like a GRO 42 is for the fresh produce. So any school can now use that procurement. So the procurement piece is no longer the biggest issue. It is always funding, but as long as Massachusetts stays universal free, there is still a lot of money going to the schools that just as long as the priority of each individual school is on farm fresh.
Okay. So that was the first time I'd heard of the state opening procurement. So is it that they've provided sort of a procurement policy for schools to adopt that
They've
allows them?
actually procured the vendors. So under each, whether it be milk and dairy is under the state now, fresh fruit and produce is under the state now. All they have to do is to qualify is contact the vendors that they've already qualified and they can get that price.
Okay.
And it's usually the bigger vendors. It's still not the smaller farms that
Mhm.
is being procured. And a lot of that is because the smaller farmer does not have transportation to deliver to the schools.
Mhm.
And they need to be paid quicker, not 30, 45 days down the road either.
Mhm. Okay, this is really interesting. I have so many questions, but I'm going to hold off for the moment. That sounds really valuable, and that seems like a really big step for farm to institution, at least for farm to school procurement,
And the
if
state
not funding.
FFV program is still inactive, and you really just basically have to say that you want to contribute. They ask every year who wants to contribute, and they will send you fresh vegetables to use every day as long as they're delivered to the classrooms.
That's the state FFV.
FFV, and we do still purchased through the DoD program. So the state allocates funds based on your participation rate every year. And
Okay.
you can use that for just fresh vegetables as well.
Okay. Not necessarily local, or is it tied to being
Local being 50 miles. We do have local on it, but it's not a lot. It's mostly upstate New York is a big producer of our vegetables through the DoD.
Okay. Okay, so those are definitely two resources that we didn't include here initially that are supporting policies, state policies that are supporting farm to institution procurement for schools. And then, yeah, the big gap being in funding and the ability to implement. And then how, I suppose that next question too is, are those procurement policies are in place? Are they being utilized
Right.
by schools? Any thoughts on how we want to score this one?
I would say being implemented.
So vote for being implemented, at least for, and we'd probably have to call it for schools.
Yeah.
We'll say that, yeah, being implemented for schools. Meg, do you have, what are your, I see you kind of
I know, I'm
maybe.
like, I feel like it's being implemented, but I feel like it's just because like some of these are things in place, it doesn't mean it's necessarily successful and it's benefiting our farmers. Does that make any sense? Like,
Mhm.
you know, I agree that some of these barriers are trying to be brought down, but you know, at the end of the day, like again, like some of the barriers that Teresa mentioned as far as like billing, et cetera, but it just really from what I'm hearing from farmers is that they have worked with schools and that they have gotten cut off and underbid by, and that price is really like the big thing. It's price and it's money.
Yeah.
But
I would
I
throw
agree
out,
with Meg.
yeah, would you, so is that 2 votes for being considered?
but then again, I guess like being implemented doesn't mean it's successful. So I mean, you can still be putting all the pieces in place, right? Like,
Right.
I
I
would
think the
say,
procurement is being implemented. Not everyone takes advantage of it, and it is not helping the small farmer in most cases. It isn't. Not our local small farmer in Plymouth County.
okay.
Yeah, being implemented but not being used to probably the maximum efficiency. I mean, if it's not all inclusive, that's the thing.
I would just note
Yeah.
here too that it's not that is just for the schools. I think, as Rita pointed out, like our daycare facilities, our hospitals, I don't think they do. Our colleges in the region typically don't do a lot of that either. Or they do and then they don't, and they kind of flip-flop on it.
Would it be, I don't know if this is maybe what you were thinking of, Joanne, but it's almost being implemented for schools, but almost no findings for the others.
I would maybe say being considered, because I know
Okay.
there's quite a few that do try. It just
Mhm.
doesn't get into that like regular implementation side of things. You know, it's more like pilots, and then they shift and try something else, and then they can't because the funding source is cut off or whatever.
Okay. Okay, so we'll look at maybe a being implemented for schools with some asterisks around how how much it's really benefiting farmers, small farmers, especially in Plymouth County, and really noting that the funding is inconsistent, which is a massive barrier.
And I'd maybe
Um,
just note public schools too. I don't know what the private schools are doing in our region.
That's a good point. Okay, so being implemented for public schools,
And
specifically.
as long as the private schools are part of the National School Lunch Program, they're part of the same program. Not all private schools are part of the part of the National School Lunch Breakfast and Lunch Program. So they
Okay.
can either opt in or opt out. But it is available to them if they're part of the program.
Okay.
which I think like 99% of all schools, public and private, are. Or 90%.
Okay. All right, and then being considered for other institutions that are listed off. All right. Okay. Just take a peek at the next one. Last one. Everyone has it in them. We're looking at healthy food retail programs. So programs that are really promoting retailing healthful local foods through demonstrations, pilot projects, marketing, point of sale, other ways of distinguishing foods and encouraging their consumption. This did come up in conversation. You know what? This was actually probably yesterday with the steering group, but I think Vicenti's looks like a resource that's maybe missing from here, and maybe Homestead Harvest.
Vicenti's definitely, yep. I don't know what Homestead Harvest is.
Yeah, Homestead Harvest is basically like a local food aggregate, but they accept HIP in a retail location. So they're in Whitman. And I know that you had asked on that questions that you sent me, Rita. Plymouth Farmers Market, they still do food cooking demonstrations, but just like on a much less it used to be a very regular thing, but it's become much more sporadic.
Oh, actually, same for Brockton Farmers Market. I don't think it's a regular, but they do them occasionally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay. So this is our last one. How are people feeling about how well-established healthy food retail programs are in Plymouth County? Generally, looking kind of across the county. Considered, implemented, doesn't seem like it's established.
Yeah, I think I'd go for implemented. I think there's quite a few programs. They're maybe not as widespread as we'd like.
I think that Boys and Girls program should go on here too, the Boys and Girls Club program.
Oh, that's good.
They're technically not in Plymouth County, but they're like in like one of the offshoots. They're in
they still serve a lot of people. Yeah,
because they are doing demonstrations. They're using the food that they're like growing.
This is the Taunton Kitchen you're talking about, I think, right?
Yeah, the Boys and Girls. I think it has like a name to it too.
Oh, is that the Blue Spoon?
Yes. No, well, because it's part of like a larger program because they have the hydroponics.
Okay.
After school program, they do like a small food pantry.
Okay.
But they are doing food demonstrations too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the Blue Spoon Community Kitchen.
Okay. Cool.
Cafe Kids Healthy Meals. They've got a whole bunch.
Okay. So closing us out, how does everyone feel about, was this being implemented? Suggested vote of being implemented?
Sure. Yes.
Sure. Is that sometimes it's like definitely the hungry, tired, time is up kind of, that works. Speaking for myself, but no.
Well, all this talk about food around lunchtime, you know what I mean?
It's so true.
I just had to eat while we were talking, so.
I do want to just comment. I'm going to stop sharing here. Again, as always, thank you everyone for jumping on, for participating, for being here, for sharing all of your knowledge. There are some really incredible resources in Plymouth County, including like OCPC. The extension services are amazing, and I have to say too, the Boys and Girls Club, and then the schools. Like I know the people that are here, but it really stands out in the conversations that we've been in, and people are asking, where do you see what are some indicators of resilience and food systems stronger? But some of those organizations are really critical. Where you've got an extension service, you've got a lot more resources. Where schools are involved, you've got a lot more resources. And without a doubt, when you've got planning organizations. So just throwing that out there. And then there's the politicians. They're fine. But when they show up on calls, it's great. So All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We didn't get to scoring every indicator. What we will be doing is just reaching out via email before the end of the month to see if there's anyone that can just have a look at a few, help us get through a few more offline. So we'll send the note out probably to the broader group, but if anyone in particular is interested, just let myself or Joanne know.
And just to tag along with that, we're going to be releasing the draft action plan in the coming weeks, hopefully by the end of May. So a lot of this will be wrapped up into that plan. But like Rita mentioned, it's kind of meant to be a living thing. So we'll constantly kind of keep developing and building and stuff over time. But we'll let you guys all know when that's available.
Yeah. And one last thing, because that is really important to us. We obviously didn't get all of the resources and assets. So once we have this 2026 final version, we do want to keep adding to it. And we are really trying to imagine and envision what that useful, accessible database can look like. So if anyone ever comes across one that they feel is well designed, really useful, you use all the time, we're really interested in finding ones that work for people. So and keep adding to it as well. So, all right. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you at the end of the month.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.